Remember that being thin and being healthy are absolutely nothing to do with each other. So you can use a semi-glutide to get thin, and bravo, but by no means are you healthy. You could be incredibly unhealthy. We could check your labs and you could be a disaster. So there is no substitute to what you did. Changing how you eat, eating the right food, exercise. If your goal is to live longer, better, higher quality, less pain, better quality skin, like just be a healthier person, well, then there's no shortcut.
Yo,
Ethan.
Hello, sir.
What's happening?
How are you, dude?
Wow.
Here we are again.
Getting on Zoom with it. Here, say hi to my son.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Max, say good morning. Say good morning. Now I can't hear you. No mumbling. Say good morning. Much better. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I can't complain. I think since the last time I spoke to you, I have two kids.
You had no kids back then. Holy moly, it's been years at this point.
No kids. I don't even know if I was married.
By the way, since the last time I spoke to you, I have 2 grandkids.
Get out of here. 2 grandkids?
Yeah.
Really?
My oldest daughter is 28. Yes, thank you. And I have 4 daughters. We got a granddaughter. And I was like, I understand girls. I know what to do with them. They're fun. And now we just finally got a grandson. So the world is very different with boys. I don't understand them yet. He's still like 3 months old. So I've got a lot of time.
Let me tell, I have a 3-year-old son and I have a 1-year-old daughter. So I'm a little late to the game. And it's interesting he just turned 3. We took him to Disneyland on Saturday and he's got into this phase. I mean, he is the sweetest, kindest, softest boy, but he's gotten nuts. These tantrums are like last night. He was smashing him and said, like we were playing. It was 9:00 at night. My wife's like, he's got to go to bed. It's trick or treat tomorrow. It's Halloween. So I'm like, it's time to go to bed. And he just went ballistic. And you've never seen a human so possessed. I mean, he was smashing his head against the wall. I had to hold him and try to just like pin him down. It was crazy. And then when he was over it, he's like, hi, Papa.
Yeah. I remember when my kids were very small and we'd have like a birthday party and suddenly this was my closest experience with little boys. And the difference between the chaos that a little girl can create and the chaos that a little boy creates, night and day. They will tear your house apart.
And he's, at 3, he's pretty damn strong. Like he punched him in the face because it was like he was just flashing around, and it's just it's fantastic and amazing and scary at the same time. He's changing so dramatically every like month or 2. So, well, mazel tov on the grandkids. That's insane.
Thank you so much.
Talk about polar opposite directions. Well, good. That's great to hear. Blessed. I'm glad they told me you moved. Where do you live now?
We live between New York and Florida. New York because we have the grandkids live in New York, and Florida because my wife's business that moved there, and we were not thrilled with Los Angeles during the pandemic. The pandemic kind of was it just didn't. My wife and daughter. The first experience was very early on. All my kids came home. They were all in schools out of the state. They all came home. And, 2-3 weeks in, my wife and daughter, we lived near Griffith Park. They're out on a walk in the park, not wearing masks outside. And they lived together. And they got screamed at by people, two different people in cars, like, how dare you? You're not social distancing. You're not wearing masks. And they were outside, not around other people. They lived together. And this was just the beginning of like, what's happening here? This is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunately, we talk about it all the time. I mean, I went to elementary school here, high school, like 100 feet from my current office. I went to college at UCLA. I mean, I've been in Los Angeles for 45 years. of no, rather 47 of my 50 years. But it's become so unpleasant. I carry a gun. I have a CCW. We had to build a huge fence around my house during COVID. During the BLM riots. We talk about it all the time that, it's a shame that we would want to leave and don't feel safe here. And yet, unfortunately, due to my community, I'm Jewish, I'm Persian, my parents live here, everybody lives here, and my business, we're kind of stuck here for a little while. But I 100%, I had so many friends leave. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that went to Texas and Nevada and Colorado and Florida. And so I get it, man. I get it. In a weird way, I'm envious. So,
with all that said, my wife has missed Los Angeles the whole time and keeps hinting that we might be on our way back. So who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. I do.
Yeah.
Listen, on this line, we were both there for the riots in the 90s. And I don't know if it was that I was so much younger or what, but I felt like when that ended, there was a sense of us as Angelenos coming together as a community and going like, okay, that was horrible. We just experienced this traumatic thing together. Now let's clean it up and have a better society because of it, which after 2020, which wasn't even as bad as the 90s, that just never happened. There was no sense of unity. I just felt like there was a disconnect between the idea that, Trump, like him or hate him, there's a reaction to him where it's like anything perceived to be in the same realm, we're going to come after you. And I didn't even understand that because Trump created the vaccines. Like Trump was the one. So it was like, okay, I want my kids to be able to go to school, and that doesn't make me a bad person. But if you express that, you're suddenly demonized by the people you live around. It was just a weird feeling.
Yeah. I think that a lot of it there's definitely I think with the riots, it was a specific thing, and this is now very global. The riots was like, you and I are the same, but this thing happened. I was obviously here during the riots as well. I did think that a lot of people have drank Kool-Aid. I mean, I think everybody on the right and everybody on the left have really gotten. It's just unfortunately an ugly place. And what we talk about with kids, and now you have grandkids, is just trying to hope that we weather this storm, and the pendulum inevitably, hopefully swings as it always does. And you can just sort of ride this wave. What else can you do as an individual? You can move and you can vote and you can do whatever. But at the end of the day, we kind of built a little insulated community. I have my friends, my family, my, whatever. And we're just sort of hunkering down to weather the storm.
Right. This is a moment we're going to get through it.
Yeah, that at some point humanity comes out on the other side. Like all the fringe people, all the people that are on the outer edges of society who currently now dictate the dialogue, all of the whoever's. And there couldn't have been a better social experiment than at Disneyland. I was so flabbergasted. I actually was in shock. I hadn't been to Disneyland in 35, 40 years. And it could not have been a better reflection of our broken society. Commercialism, cultism, lack of health, overweight, just out there, adults that behave like infants, no accountability. Like everything was wrong at Disneyland. It was such a weird microcosm. It's like a petri dish of like everything that's wrong. I'm sorry, I know it's the happiest place on earth, but I didn't find it that way. And my kids had to find, they couldn't, but I was just freaking out. I mean, everywhere I turned, there was something wrong. And I was just like, oh my God, how did we get here? So, well, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. I'm always really excited to talk to you for a couple of reasons. One, I want to talk to you about, because I imagine you deal with this more than anyone else, where they come to you and like, my train of thought is always in the area of weight loss. And somebody comes to you and they say, I thought it was going to be X and it's Y and I'm devastated by it. And can you help me? And what is it like dealing with somebody who, because look, I think we could probably do this episode a few times a year, talk about loose skin. It's just not overly communicated enough about, in my opinion, for people who lose a lot of weight. You're just statistical odds on having loose skin is almost 100%. And
yeah, for sure.
Not going into it knowing that, or thinking, well, I'll tighten up or I'll gain muscle, or, I'll take collagen protein powder because that'll help my skin. Like, or not even thinking about it can be devastating.
Yeah, and it's a very good point, and I think this it highlights the sort of the it's kind of like an album, and it's the B side of the album. So your mind is set. Okay, I'm overweight. I got here because of 100 reasons, and now I finally made that critical decision that I'm going to go the other direction. Whether that is diet and exercise, whether that is gastric sleeve, whether that's gastric bypass, whether it was the lap band, whether now it's Mounjaro or any of these semaglutides. I always tell patients, I don't care how you get there. Obviously, I'd love for you to get there on diet and exercise because I think it's the most sustainable method, right? Because at the end of the day, you didn't get to being 150 pounds overweight accidentally. It was a lifestyle decision. So the most likely way of losing it and sustaining it is something that is built into your lifestyle. But nonetheless, I still give patients a tremendous amount of credit, and I applaud them for having lost the weight in any way, shape, or form. Then they always comment, by the time they've gotten to me, they've done enough homework and they've been sitting with the reality of the flip side of the B side of the album, which is what you said is very true. First of all, I hold some of the weight loss surgeons accountable, because when you go and do diet and exercise, often you're on a solo journey, or at best you're with a trainer, and maybe the trainer should be involved. But when you have surgical bariatric surgery, there's a doctor associated with you. And on many occasions, I presented myself to bariatric surgeons. I said, let's come up with a holistic plan whereby which when you meet a patient at 300 pounds and you're about to start their journey and you talk to them about, you let us come speak to them at that moment in preparation for when they will have lost the weight. Because when they will have lost the weight, 100% of the time, if you lose more than 50 pounds, which is not a lot, 20 years old, 30 years old, 50 years old, you will have redundancy of skin in such a form that it will bother you as much as having been overweight. In other words, it's not like, well, now I'm skinny. Who gives a shit that I have loose skin on my abdomen? Now I'm skinny. I don't mind the excess skin on my arms. No, you're actually going to mind a little bit more, because you have now really put your mind to it. And in your mind, as you said, once I get to my welterweight or close thereof, I'm going to reach utopia. I mean, this is it. And when you find out that there's this redundancy, that there's nothing you can do, nothing, no muscle mass, no creams, no powders, no supplements, it's excess skin. You're so bummed out because it costs money. It takes time. It requires recovery. It has incisions. And had you known, which is what you're referring to, well in advance, because most people take at least a year, if not more, to lose that substantial weight, you could have been preparing mentally, physically, financially, emotionally. But so when I went to these bariatric guys, I'm like, guys, let's tell them together what A to Z is, not A to P is. And of course, it was shot down.
Well, are they afraid that people are going to back out of the surgery?
I think they're afraid they're going to back out of surgery. They don't really. Yes. I think ultimately I can't speak on behalf of an entire profession, and I don't want to speak poorly about them because, of course, they're amazing and they are helping so many people. I'm just saying, when I approach several prominent bariatric surgeons to discuss this philosophic approach, which is let's talk about what is going to be almost the inevitable and create an entire journey. At the very minimum, let us talk to them so they can start saving money. How about that?
Right.
How about that just as an aside? And so that was shot down. And I think that on the semi-glutide side, that's a whole new world. And then on the diet and exercise side, I think trainers and, I commend trainers, right? Because they're your coach and your champion, but many of them lead you to believe that you can exercise your way out of everything.
Right.
Well, John, you're 27 and you're fit. You didn't have 3 kids. You're not going to fix your diastasis. You weren't 278 pounds. So I think some of that is fool's gold. And I think 100% what you do and you talk about is really critical, because it's just reality. It's so you can't just stop halfway through the journey. And patients many of them are not happy, even though they lost the weight.
There's so much there, Dr. Rahban. And on many levels, I thought all of my depression, anxiety, I thought all my financial strife, I thought I saw the world through the lenses of obesity. Every problem began and ended with obesity. So there's a point where I think about trainers and I think like they're looking at this person and as though this person's life is on fire, and the number one thing they need to start addressing their life is to lose weight because they're going to get sick and die or whatever. And that's what the person's coming to them doing, is paying. And so I understand you don't want to tell them there's going to be a lot of downsides to this. You don't want to tell them the negative effects that they're going to be unhappy with. You don't want to tell them this isn't the total solution, because it's hard to motivate them then. So
I agree.
In that respect, I understand. But at the same time, loose skin for me was devastating. And I had no idea it was going to be a situation. I thought, I'm going to get smaller, all parts of me. No, I had no idea I was going to have this organ living outside of me that was going to make me, 6 pant sizes larger, despite losing as much fat as humanly possible. And that it was going to get rashes and make weird noises when I exercised, and just be a constant point of like taking off my clothes and being horrified at how I looked, So I totally agree with you. Like, it costs money. It's something to expect. It should be something that, or I wish it was something that was brought up in the beginning. And I don't know why people don't do that.
I like I said, I think that in the totality of it, obviously losing the weight is, I would say, is a much more important, weighs more. Right. And I think that often, the idea is, well, obviously being overweight has so many negative impacts in one's life, health, psychology, emotion, that, it seems like, yeah, we'll worry about that when we get there. And while that might be true, I do think it's a shame that it isn't even just discussed. And I do recognize the idea of the inertia, which is, sometimes if you take too big a bite or too big a step fall, and perhaps unbeknownst to them, not highlighting the aftermath in a weird way works in some ways beneficial, because ignorance is bliss. And maybe if you knew that on the other side of the tunnel was still yet another tunnel, maybe you wouldn't enter the tunnel. So, I get it and I understand. And I think you and your approach and your philosophies of talking about obesity, what one can do, the psychology. I mean, it's through the eyes of people like you, because I can talk about it all I want, but I was never overweight and I never had the surgery. So I think you're doing, a tremendous duty to everyone who is on your journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the tunnel beyond the tunnel is kind of the whole game, because even if we look at bariatric surgery, the statistics with regression and weight regain are so high that it's like, look,
yes,
you said it earlier, like the thing that's been proven to have the longest lasting effects are diet and exercise and behavioral changes and slow weight loss, right? Those, if you just compile the data on people who have lost weight and kept it off for the longest, it's people that did that or are doing that currently. Now we have these semaglutides, which I can't wait to hear if that's changed your practice and suddenly you're seeing a lot more people because of it, because that's to me a benefit. That would be good. But people who go in and get bariatric surgery often aren't told immediately that there's going to be a second surgery required down the line, and that it's not foolproof and it's not irreversible, that you can eat your way through it. You know, it's not like you had the surgery, you never have to think about anything else again. It does at some point require lifestyle changes because it's not a permanent fix. And so unless these permanent fixes are in place where we're dealing with the mental side of it and we're dealing with our behavioral side of it, right? Like I don't know if long-term semaglutide is a surefire method. It seems like people are losing weight and keeping the weight off so long as they stay on those drugs. But what happens when there's a shortage of that drug, which we've seen, or they just don't feel like taking it anymore, or it's too much of a burden on their finances? And then and then it's like, well, I've lost all this weight. And what happens now? You know, if you don't have something to back that up, and part of that is knowing there's going to be loose skin.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I have patients who come to me, and in a weird way, I think fixing the loose skin sort of locks you in to being thin. So let me explain what I mean by that. So here you are mentally, and let's say you weigh 280 pounds. You have for most of your life. That's who you identify with. I've never met someone who's 280 pounds and likes the fact that they're 280 pounds, because at the end of the day, most people recognize it's bad for their biology. It's bad for their mental health. And they finally lose the weight. And then let's say they come to see me. I think the people who don't remove the redundant skin, and I would love to see a study on this, are more prone to gaining the weight back than those who remove the excess skin. And this is my thought process. When you lose that weight and you look at yourself in the mirror, while your medical benefits are no different to that person who lost the weight and got the skin removed. In other words, your blood pressure decreases, your insulin, everything about you medically is awesome. Your energy through the roof, all that. But such a big part of obesity is the self-love and the self-image. And then you go stand in front of the mirror and you don't see a person you like. You don't. You have saggy breasts, your arms are excess skin, your thighs have excess skin, and your abdomen, your trunk, and so on and so forth. So then you live this bizarre duality. When you're wearing clothes, people high five you. And you know as well as anybody else that when your clothes come off, that's not the image that you see. And so if you don't surgically remove it such that you go look in the mirror and you're like, aha, I got it. All this time and energy and suffering and weight loss and money, and it's finally done, you are much more unlikely to gain the weight back, because as aside from the money you just spent, you like the way you look. You like this new person. You are much more in love with the person you see, and you're more likely to be kind to the person you see in the mirror. Whereas if you lost all the weight and you're just a different version of, I don't like myself, I didn't like myself overweight, and I certainly don't like myself with all this loose skin, you are more likely to just slip back into this, the poor habits that go along with depression and anxiety and discontent for yourself. So I tell patients that I think that the cosmetic component, which is kind of reconstructive, I don't even know that I call it cosmetic, sort of seals you into your weight loss. And that I have seldom, not never, I can recall a few, but I've seldom seen patients gain all that weight back, irrespective of what life throws at them. Because I think that you're surgically locked in. And that's just been my anecdotal experience with a lot. I mean, I do a lot of weight loss surgery.
Have you seen those numbers tick up since the peptides or the weight loss peptides?
Yeah. What it's done is as follows. It's created a whole new category. So we had patients who are 100 or 75 to 100 pounds or more, they were always in our practice. Now we have patients that were 30 or 40 pounds overweight. That's the game changer. Because the people that were 100 pounds overweight, semi-glutide or not, they were going to lose the weight one way or another if they were going to lose it, right? Bariatric surgery. But if you were 30 pounds overweight, you were kind of screwed.
It's the hardest. I mean, that's the hardest part of, I get what you're saying, because I think at 100 pounds, you start off and the weight is just flying off. You make one change and the weight's flying off. And then maybe you have to make more, and it's difficult and it's long and it's not, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not taking away from you.
Not at all.
But I do think like the way I struggled with weight loss, and I had to lose 300 pounds, was very different really than the way my wife has struggled with her 5 pounds to 7 pounds. You know what I mean? Like that is like because teeth to get those pounds off of her.
Because like you said, it's everything becomes exponential. And why the semi-glutides, right or wrong, we'll get into in a minute, why they've been a game changer is there is a tremendous number of people that are not obese, but marginally overweight. So if you take a person, let's just hypothetically take a 5'10" person who should be between 160 to 180 pounds or 165 to 185 pounds, and you're 25 pounds overweight, unless you change 12 things, you're really not going to ever see that weight come off. And so where the semi-glutide has changed my practice is that now these people with, Mounjaro, Wegovy, Ozempic, what have you, they're losing that 20, 30 pounds. And that's enough of a weight loss, especially at 35 years old and more, that you start to develop some subtle but still significant cosmetic change. In other words, listen, my breasts, they were okay when I was 30 pounds overweight, but now, they're not. My abdominal area, my trunk, my inner thighs, the number of facelifts that I do now in my practice has tripled in the last 3 to 5 years. And that's because myself being 50, when you're 45 to 55 and you're a little overweight, you kind of can hide some laxity. But when you lose that weight and you get really thin and hollow and you look good, like every celebrity you can imagine, you will have some mid-face laxity, some laxity in your neck. And I think of all the things that I do now, I think the semi-glutides impacted facial surgery the most.
Well, I mean, that's a great point. I've worn a beard since I've lost weight for that very reason, because my face
100%.
hangs down, and that's just something where I had surgeries and the surgeries were rough and I had anxiety and I didn't do them right. And we talked about this before, but like I was so like, I can't go through that again. It was not, maybe I could today, to be honest with you. I'm in a much better mental place today than I was in 2008. And I also gained back weight and I was just not in a good place then. But I would love to be able to shave my face. I can't because my face is dripping off my skull.
100%. And that's precisely why the majority of the people that I'm doing now, are women, because men have beards and we can hide it and we can wear a beard and we can wear a goatee and we can wear, whatever. And women obviously can't. And so, but I absolutely have men, and absolutely where the biggest change has occurred is in facial surgery in that age bracket. And why not? We've really done an incredible job. The surgery, look, I mean, I don't find social media to be 90% of it is harmful than helpful. 10% of it is helpful. And this is where it was helpful, because now you can see like Brad Pitt, Demi Moore. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. People that are who lost weight on one of these drugs and had beautifully executed facial rejuvenation. And you no longer have to think of Joan Rivers, rest in peace, and other people. There was a generation ago, I mean, literally a generation ago, and now we have a ton of 50-year-olds. I mean, just a month ago, I did a good friend of mine, and she was 51. She's a doctor, and that I think was a big game changer in a good way. So I mean, listen,
is this new techniques? Is this new technology? What has changed? Because like when I think of a facelift, I do unfortunately think of Joan Rivers. I even, to be perfectly honest with you, saw Brad Pitt in a movie 10 years ago and thought he had obvious work done. And I'm a fan of his, but then to your point, I saw him very recently and thought he looks great. Well, I don't know what happened here. Do you know what I mean?
So I can tell you about the facial surgery. It's a combination of things. It's a combination of the techniques have not, surgeons are very good at marketing. So this techniques may seem like they've gotten different. Like Dr. Smith calls it the Smith lift. Dr. Rahban calls it, my office is on Lasky, the Lasky lift. All that's nonsense. What it is that we've really gotten very good at understanding the techniques that we've had, and surgeons are getting better at executing the existing techniques. Facial surgery, basically, for the gist of it, just for whoever's, whatever's listening, we used to lift mostly skin. Now we're predominantly, if done correctly, lifting skin and deeper tissue, AKA the muscles. And when you elevate the muscles and then elevate the skin a little less, you're putting the tension, right, on the muscle layer. So the skin doesn't look so taut.
Right.
That's number one. And that's just called a deep plane facelift. Nobody invented that. None of these people today invented that. They may make mild modifications for the purpose of marketing and call it their own techniques, but no one today can take ownership of this process. We've just gotten very good at cooking, borscht. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you add a little garlic, you add a little parsley.
Yes,
right.
yes.
I get it. Yeah.
Right. And then the second thing is that our aesthetics have gotten better. What we strive for and subtleties is better, meaning, what we're shooting for is a little more subtle. Our aesthetics are milder. And the third, and very, very important, is that you're operating on better candidates. Right? Joan Rivers didn't look like Joan Rivers, the one you think, with her first facelift. And I assure you, Brad Pitt will look like Joan Rivers at 80 if he continues to have facelift after facelift after facelift. So part of what was causing the problem was that younger people were not getting facelifts, older people were getting facelifts, and they're shittier candidates. Like, obviously, if I do a facelift on a 50-year-old, good-looking, healthy man or woman and do a lesser surgery because they have lesser stuff going on, the result is more subtle and natural than if I do it on a 7-year-old woman who already has thin skin and I pull, and now she looks like she came out of a wind tunnel. So don't forget, we're operating on better people. So that combination has changed the game. And I think facial surgery has never been better. And I think that if and when you get to a place that it matters to you, I think you will find that it will be a nice, listen, you want to wear a beard, then great. But if
I can get to a place. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
In 2008, when it was even a consideration, I just looked around at what facelifts look like and was like, I would rather just wear a beard than look like that.
Sure. Fair enough. I understand that, obviously. But I think it's come a long way. And I think if you even spend 5 minutes on social media, which, as I said, for the most part is damaging, and this at least you can see for yourself, like, oh, wow, it's not too bad. Oh, wow, that's pretty good. At least it sheds a little bit of optimism that things are better. But yeah. So that's where semi-glutides have been a game changer.
Right.
Now, the question at hand is, how long can you sustain semi-glutides? And the truth of the matter is it's too early to say. I have patients that have been on semi-glutides for many years, even though they're only generally most popular for the last few years, but they've been around for a while. They just weren't as popular to just Susie or John. Right. They have no medical problems. They just go online and they speak to a doctor online and boom, there's the semi-glutide at their house. That was just never the case 5, 8, 10 years ago. But I think the jury is not out yet. I don't know if this is a drug like, say, metoprolol, which is a blood pressure medication that you take, or simvastatin that you take for 25 years? Is it a drug that you just dose for the rest of your life? Or is it a drug that you take, and then you gotta get off because the side effects are too high? And as a result, now you gotta wing it. The tricycle, the wheels came off. You gotta bite, you gotta pedal. So I don't know that we know that, but I do know that a massive number of my patients are on it. I mean, like, I want to say 1 in 5 patients, something crazy number of my patients.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting what you say there too, because like I am on a blood pressure medicine that I've been on for 20 years. And in fact, I've cut back. I've been able to cut my dose in half and might even come off of it altogether. But that's a very slow process that I work with my doctor. And when we're thinking about cutting the dose back, it was months of taking readings every day and taking readings at different times in the day, and him going like, okay, this is fine. This dose is fine. With something like you're saying, people are getting this drug by calling somebody and getting it, like that to me already seems unsustainable. Like, what company are you calling? Where are you getting the drug? Are you going to CVS to pick up a thoroughly manufactured drug? Or I'm hearing about all these compounding places where you're not even totally sure what you're getting. And to me, that seems like something for someone who's like, I want to lose 10 pounds or 20 or 30 or whatever it is. I'm going to get this drug for a couple of months. They're very expensive. And then do you just keep doing that forever, calling that company? And what happens if that company becomes illegal or gets shut down, or they change the regulating rules, or compounds, or I don't understand all of it. I understand I take a medicine that my doctor prescribed and I've been taking it for a long time. So if you're getting it that way, I understand. But like somebody who's just going online and getting this stuff, to me, that feels less sustainable. But what the fuck do I know? Maybe people will take that forever.
I mean, what the fuck do I know? I mean, the truth of the matter is that money talks, and weight loss is, I mean, it's up there with hair loss. I mean, right. Weight loss, hair loss. I mean, oh, wow. My son decided he found his blankie. Weight loss and hair loss. This is one of the drugs going to forever into the landscape of humanity, right? I call it, there's Propecia, there was Viagra, there was Botox, and now there is the semaglutides. And these are game changers. I mean, truly changed the landscape of humanity, right? And so when Propecia came out, it was like, what? And or Prozac, right? These are just like drugs that, and so I think that the reality is it's too early to be said. And I think that the truth is that the biggest element that drives this is going to be complications, right? What complications is going to drive this? In other words, because there's money to be made, anytime there's money to be made, there's going to be scoundrels. It's just, anytime there's a carcass, there's going to be vultures. It's just the way that the ethos works. And so now everyone's like, holy shit, oh my God, we can make billions from this. And so what they're doing is finding online people because there's a shortage, and I had to go outside. I had to go outside because of my son, and now there's a police helicopter flying over. So I think what's going to drive this is going to be complications. In other words, if it gets such a wild, wild west whereby which people, Chinese knockoffs, weird fabrications, people are overdosing, right? Because they're not as regulated. They're having liver toxicity, failure of organs. You find a few people die more and get in the public. You'll see a shrinkage occurring, because right now it's the too good to be true phase, right? There aren't enough of, oh, did you hear that lady died? Oh, did you hear that guy had a stroke? Did you hear? And if that never happens, then perhaps it will become one of those mainstay drugs forever. If over the next year to 2 to 3, a whole bunch of nasty or bad things happen, then you'll find some regulatory elements. You'll find some shrinkage, but it's never going away, because just like having hair, just like, these other things, it's such a cornerstone of humanity to be, thinner. And I don't even want to say thinner, because it's, when you're overweight, it has all of its problems. I mean, it's not to suggest that it's just purely aesthetic, but
I don't think it's purely aesthetic at all. I think it's very deeply psychological. And then there's aesthetic, and then there's comfort too. Like, wearing a 50-pound weight vest, or in my case, a 300-pound weight vest. There was like literal pain associated with my daily life that is not part of my daily life anymore. But I also take your point and agree with you. Like, I lost the weight I needed to lose before I'd ever heard of these. I guess some of them existed 6-7 years ago, or many years ago. I heard somebody said there was a GLP-1 agonist in use all the way back to 2005.
There was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was a diabetic drug.
Right.
Right. This is like oh, shit, it also does this. It was kind of one of those.
Yeah. I'd never heard of them, and they seem to be exploding. And I definitely go back to like remembering being put on fen-phen in the 90s.
Sure. Yes, very true.
And
Phentermine.
Right. And if I can put myself back to 500 plus pounds, and you said, here's this thing that will make weight loss really easy, I pretty much do whatever. I try anything. You know what I mean? When I was desperate, I would do anything to get that weight off. I didn't do surgery because I was absolutely terrified of surgery. So the side effects would have to be really severe. Like, people would have to start dropping dead right and left, I think, to get me, when I was that big, to not consider taking one of these things.
I mean, listen, comparing a drug to surgery is like a lobotomy versus a haircut. I mean, there's no doubt that people will give a shot to a drug. Secondly, I am 100% a fan of using, within reason, whatever modalities you have to get yourself jump started and moving in the right direction. The inertia of quitting smoking, the inertia of losing weight is so great that if you had a tool that allowed you, or assisted, or promoted that movement, why not? I see patients in my office all the time, and they're like, struggling with weight. I'm like, take the damn drug.
Yeah.
But work with that drug, because those training wheels should come off, right? I'm not an advocate personally of just taking a drug knowing damn well that, you really should just eat less. You really should not eat that candy bar. You really should eat less calories. I mean, we know what it takes. I mean, if I wired someone's mouth shut and they drank a protein shake every day for 6 weeks, they'd lose weight. There's no question about it. So I think, but I definitely am a big fan of using the tools available to you as they're intended as tools. And so I think if you were overweight now as you were then, 100% you would have used the drug, and as you should have. It's designed for you. Yeah. It's designed for people who want to get started in the direction.
Right. The cognitive dissonance is that for the longest time, I just wanted one thing to be a solution. So whether that was, I'm not going to eat gluten, I'm not going to eat sugar, I'm not going to eat, it was just one thing. I'm going to eat only 500 calories a day and lose the weight that way. I didn't want to get into everything you're talking about. I didn't want to recognize that this is step one. There's going to be 1,000 steps. This step is going to be very different than a step I'm on in 30 years or 5 years or next year or 6 months. This is step one. It's really hard, to rearrange your life in that way. I found it to be really hard. It took me a long time to get to the point where I realized, very slowly, I have utterly reshaped my life, and I've excised some things that I can't do anymore. As absolutes, like binge eating is off the table for me. I still have the desire to it. I'll almost go into a trance sometimes when I'm eating, suddenly I'm not having conversation. I'm just hyper fixated on putting the food in my mouth and swallowing it. And it's really good for me to have my wife to like just touch me and like make eye contact and break whatever the hell is happening to me at that time. But like, my point is, I've reconstructed my life to remove anything that would help me regain the weight. And even still, some of those systems, those internal systems will take over. So like, I'm just being empathetic to like, I agree with you. That's the solution. The solution is use the tool, recognize that it's a tool. It's one tool. It's going to take many tools.
Right.
But I also just have to be real in admitting that I couldn't see that until I'd done it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And of course, 100%. First and foremost, remember that being thin and being healthy are absolutely nothing to do with each other. Right. So you can use a semi-glutide to get thin, and bravo. And maybe you'll get some of the medical benefits because you're not 300 pounds and so your blood pressure is less. But by no means are you healthy. You could be incredibly unhealthy. We could check your labs and you could be a disaster. So there is no substitute to what you did. Changing how you eat, eating the right foods, working out, exercise. If your goal is to be skinny, sure, semi-glutide yourself away. If your goal is to live longer, better, higher quality, less pain, better quality skin, like just be a healthier person, well, then there's no shortcut. Furthermore, we now know that people who are overweight have the same food chatter, the same impulsive brain wiring as gamblers, as smokers, as it's an addiction. That's not new. We know that. We know that a person who eats, as you said, binge eats or anything of that matter, the wiring of their brain is very much like the person who is gambling late at night, trying to get their money back, or the person who is smoking and is coughing up blood out of their lungs, but still smoking. Oddly, one of the things that the semi-glutide does, aside from slowing down your gastroparesis, which then doesn't make you hungry, which then makes you not eat, there is some data that suggests that it short circuits the food chatter. And they have found some benefits in these drugs in individuals who gamble.
Wow.
And so I think that what that underscores, not again speaking, so I don't have any stock in these drugs, but underscoring what you were saying, which is what's been always said, which is a huge component of weight, obesity, is the mental impulses. And that is what prevents people, better yet, that's what caused people to yo-yo. So you eat well, you finally figure it out. Okay, I need 1,800 calories. It's going to be broccoli, quinoa, chicken breast. I don't eat after 6. I keep all the shit food out of my house. Got it. So why is it that you end up yo-yoing? Right. Because you have these massive impulses, which will never go away. And you have to find a method, Zen, wife, whatever, to prevent yourself from having these sudden surges of, oh wow, I'm definitely going to overeat right now.
It's an unconscious system for me. My experience has been there's no amount of analytically talking myself out of it once it happens because I'm no longer in control. It's almost like blacking out or having amnesia. Sure. It's a waking state of sleeplessness where, I sit down to dinner with my friends. I've maybe made the decision, like I'm going to be a little bit looser on my diet because I really wanted to try, the Egyptian falafels at this restaurant. They use something green. I've not seen green falafel. I'm really excited about trying that. So I've given myself the pass. I'm going to eat some stuff that I don't normally eat. Great. I'm going to have some pita. Great. And suddenly everything's silent and it's just get the food into my mouth. And it's not, it is bizarre. It is a thing that takes over, and there have to be systems that are trying to 100%. Get you 6 steps earlier. Like what happens? I'm going to have one bite. So separate my one bite before I put it in my mouth. And that's all I'm having. And, you know,
Yeah, but that's the key. The key to success is identifying the process and then finding safety mechanisms to help you along the way. So, hey guys, just, for example, when you feel comfortable and you're with your wife, she knows better. And without having to say anything to embarrass you, whatever, she'll kind of tap you and look at you and sort of be like, honey, and you'll be like, oh, okay. And, or, hey guys, we're about to go eat. In case I start eating a lot, just gently remind me, whatever that is, or separate your food, or, ironically, you'll find it interesting. I have a very bad relationship with eating. I'm not overweight, but I tend to eat infrequently, but overeat. I have an overeating issue. And when I sit down to eat, because I'm a surgeon and I eat very quickly, I don't give enough time for cessation to kick in, and I will always overeat. And I know I'm going to overeat, and I overeat anyways.
Yeah.
So because I'm still hungry, yet I just scarf down the food because I'm used to eating very quickly. So when I want to be sure I don't overeat, I step away mid-meal. And I guarantee you, if anyone's listening, this will work. You step away mid-meal, you set a timer for whatever, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, and then you just wait. And then when you go back to eat, it will kind of gross you out. You're kind of full already. It ruined it. It kind of ruined that hunger, appetite, joy, because you stepped away. The food made it to the point where the sensors go off. Oh, food. And you just aren't hungry. That's why appetizers, they say for you, they start your hunger. For me, it actually kills my hunger.
Yeah.
So at any rate, the point I'm making is I know my own method. And you know your own method. And the key is to be real and know where you have a breakdown, whatever that breakdown is.
Okay, I've one last question for you. And it's, you said you had a couple experiences with people getting skin removed and then gaining weight back. More than that, though, like we talked about how my experience was very much everything existed within weight loss. And then when that didn't solve all my problems, I was disappointed. And I really like your philosophy and don't disagree with you that getting the skin removed locks you in, gives you more of a drive. You feel better. I certainly look at myself in the mirror today, still have some loose skin, but look at myself and am really much happier than I was prior to that.
Sure.
Are there any things people need to know about skin removal that is a gotcha? Are people disappointed in scars? Like, is there any aspect to it that isn't talked about that, like the trainer who's just cheerleading the guy because he knows weight loss is important?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
What should people know prior to that?
I think we talked about this in our last episode years ago when it was much more focused on the actual surgeries itself. And I'm happy to one day come back. As you had said, plastic surgery and massive weight loss are sisters and brothers. It isn't a once in a blue moon conversation. It's literally we're juxtaposed to each other, at least in my opinion. And I think you've echoed that to a certain degree. So when we spoke last time, I discussed that generally speaking, weight loss patients in the plastic surgery world are approached not with the same level of accuracy and quality as if you came in and you were a patient who's a 52-year-old woman who wants a facelift. Right. So let me elaborate. The overwhelming majority of surgeons who do body contouring, which is what we call this after massive weight loss, tag team and do a bunch of things at once. So most surgeons, you walk in, you say, listen, hey, Dr. Rahban, I'm Ethan. I've lost like 300 pounds and my arms bother me. My inner thighs bother me. My chest bothers me. My trunk bothers me. My neck doesn't bother me that much. I can wear a beard. And then I would come up with a game plan. And naturally, you want it all gone. And naturally, I want all of it gone too.
And but I'm sitting there saying, let's go one time, do the whole thing, and like give me. I want to come out. Yeah.
knock this shit out. And you're a kid who wants candy, and I'm the ice cream truck owner. And I look at you and I'm like, no problem. What we'll do is we'll do your arms, your inner thighs, and your body lift. And you go, sign me up.
Yes.
So then the question you need to ask, which you don't, because at that point you're so elated, is who the fuck is in the surgery with you? That is a shit ton of operating.
Yeah.
And the answer is a bunch of people. And whereas Formula One, having 4 people at each tire is advantageous, in my humble opinion, when it comes to surgery, having 4 people, 1 at each extremity, is deleterious. It's detrimental. It's terrible. Why? Because you went in and signed up with Dr. Rahban, and Dr. Rahban is doing your right arm, but he's not doing your left arm. He's not doing your right thigh or your left thigh. Marco is doing your left arm, and Julie is doing your right thigh. Who the fuck is Marco and Julie? And they are part of my team. And body contouring generally has a multi-person approach. And as a result, and should be a shocker, the outcomes are not as good as if Dr. Smith did all of it, and or if you came in for a rhinoplasty. And the philosophy inherently with weight loss patients is it's good enough. And that your expectations are far lesser than Julie who came in for a facelift.
Right.
Your aesthetic, cosmetic expectations are far lesser because just the sheer fact that I show you all that skin on a table will make you so elated that the fact that your arms don't match, the fact that your scar is shit, the fact that you had a wound complication and areas opened up, the fact, you'll tolerate it because, well, oh my God. So my son's in his
he's ready for
Halloween.
Yes.
Look at you, Max. You look so cool, man. Firefighter. So the reason, and I'll end it with this, is what makes me unique, and this is my plug for myself, is that for 20 years, I sew every single stitch in every single patient myself. In body contouring, that is unheard of. Yeah. That's totally, completely asinine. So when I do a circumferential body lift, it takes me 6.5 hours. So when you come into my office and you say, Dr. Rahban, I've lost all this weight in my neck and my arm, blah, blah, blah. I say to you, do you want an Hermes bag or do you want a Coach bag? There's nothing wrong with Coach. It's mass produced. It's made on an assembly line. It comes out of China. It's awesome. It does the job, but it ain't anything special, and don't expect it to last very long because I'm going to do everything myself. So I have a limit of what I can do. So we have to do it in stages. So that's the only thing I would tell you when it comes to the surgical component of it. I mean, shit, there's so much more, but I think to end with that is, I think that's really important to understand. That when you go in eager to have everything removed, remember that that's in the best interest of the surgeon, because if I stage it, you may not come back. I may lose that component of your surgery, right? And so it's in my best interest to just do it all and get all of your money at the same time. You will have a shitty recovery. You will not be able to move. For example, I never do arms and legs at the same time because then when you want to get in and out of bed to go pee, you're going to fuck something up.
Right.
So I think that I think is a really, really important understanding that there is a high level and a low level aesthetic component to a massive weight loss contouring.
And it's also the thing of like, I just want one thing to fix every problem in my life. And like, okay, or are you a work in progress? Are you going to take 100%. It a little bit slower? Are you going to wind up with everything exactly as you wanted it, or do it really quick and be kind of unhappy, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I saw a lady, God bless her. I saw her in my office maybe 3 months ago and just broke my heart. She had done all the weight loss. She was skinny. She looked good in clothes. And then she was here for all these scar revisions. And it was just so disheartening. Beautiful woman. And I was just like, everything was just awful, awful scars. And, you know, you could tell she was insecure.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think it's a shame to have gone that far in the journey and then fall short. So, it's a journey. So just follow through, take your time, get there happy, and then move on.
Yeah. And then live your life. Dr. Rahban, thank you so much. I always love talking to you. This has been a real pleasure.
I think we need to do this more than once. Every time I have 2 kids and you have grandkids, I think we should try to make it I would venture to say that you and I could talk for hundreds of hours.
I would be willing to bet the same.
If we had the time. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me as always.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too, brother. Bye.
Bye.